Okay, streams live. Um, you might notice that my chair is a bit boosted. I just put it on wheels, like for real. But I promised you all a rundown of the final 2020 presidential debate between Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. So here we go. So I don't think anybody needs to uh, see this that hasn't already seen it. I mean, I see view counts on different channels of 15 million, 12 million, 3.6 million. Lots of people watched it. I don't think I'm giving anybody anything that they haven't already heard from this, but I just like to be complete in my analysis of things. I like to finish my projects, and I do this every 4 years. I've been doing it, and so I'll just keep doing it. Um, I will tell you that since I watched the debates, I also watched a bit of coverage on the debates, and I watched the SNL skits that were based on the final debate, and I also watched the Borat movie, um, which came out the morning after the debate and was about as funny as the original. And it had that one moment where Rudy Giuliani's got his hands down his pants. So that's what might be biasing my take on this, but I don't think that you'll find that my take is too different from any takes that I've had previously on these things. So just me. Um, so the show started. It was Kristen Welker was the mediator, and she said, "How will you lead the country through the next stage of the coronavirus?" I mean, she explained like the new rules about the muting of the mic, but it didn't really have much of an effect on things. I think that both contestants were wanting to be seen as a little bit more civil compared to the first debate. So maybe it had an effect, but it wasn't abused. It wasn't like something where either of them looked like on their face that they were pained that they couldn't just jump in and talk to people whenever they wanted. Um, it I think it was a reaction to the first debate, but it wasn't really as needed as it was in the first debate, and maybe they should just keep it around just in case, especially for first debates. Maybe. Um, so she asked, "How will you lead the country through the next stage of the coronavirus?" And Trump was like, you know, 20 or 2.2 million were modeled to die, and I was like, "What? You're gonna take a win because more people were supposed to die than the horribly tragic large number that did?" Um, so like, yeah, my own math for this was that 10 times as many people would die in the U.S. And I don't think that Trump had anything to do with people not dying. I think it was actually the people themselves that were um, just their own social distancing kept this from getting worse. That's what I didn't factor into my numbers. Still, it's bad. It's really really bad. Like we're worse than other countries, but at least it wasn't as bad as I thought Americans could be. Um, Trump went on to say, "Oh yeah, it came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. The mortality rate is down 85%. And I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about with that number. I cannot like place that number on any statistic about anything related to the coronavirus and make it stick to where it makes sense in that context. He was just throwing a number out of his ass, in my opinion. Um, he said a vaccine is coming within weeks. Um, and then, as soon as I heard that, I was like, I remember just a couple weeks ago when you said that we'd have it before the election. And things keep on getting pushed back. I mean, on the other side, they're like, you guys said it would only take 2 weeks of social distancing and it'd be gone. And then 2 weeks turned into 2 months. It's turning into, 10 months, and yet here's the president kicking the can down the road, uh, saying, oh, we're going to have a vaccine within weeks when he promised it by the election. And now he's saying within weeks or like by the end of the year. These promises that he keeps making, they keep on getting you know modified. He also called the therapeutic remdesivir that he got from the hospital a cure. He wants to label it a cure. um, it's not a cure, but it does help a lot. But yeah, it was a good opening volley. She started with the right topic, I think, that everyone wants to hear about. So when Biden got his chance to answer the question, how will you lead the country, through the next stage of the coronavirus, his answer was, uh, 220,000 people dead. Anyone responsible for that shouldn't be president. Uh, he said there could be 200,000 more by the end of the year. If numbers hold steady, and it's like 1,000 a day, that's at least 60,000. You know, that's easy math. But could spike more. Um, he said he would tell everybody to wear their mask all the time. And he had his mask in his pocket, just to wave it. And he said he'd do rapid testing and give a national guidance on how to reopen, which is things that Trump won't do. He won't give national guidance because he wants to blame it on governors. He doesn't want any of the blame on himself. Oh, I got someone check. Oh, Propter Hawk, how you doing? Just going over the debate. I'm a little tired from uh, actually cleaning up my room and boosting up my chair. I put wheels on it. It's now a wheeled recliner. Um, so, uh, yeah, Trump doesn't want to take any of the blame for the virus, so he keeps on pushing off the blame onto uh, governors, and so that's why he won't give a national response. He won't give a national mask mandate. He won't give a national guidance on how to reopen because he doesn't want the blame on the nation. He wants to blame on individual governors. Proctor Hawk, yes, cleaning can suck, but the reason why I'm cleaning is because I have to, in a couple days, take a comps exam where I have to detach this camera and then pan it around the room, and there's like going that way, that's all the stuff that I'm okay with you seeing. But like this way, like my desk is a mess. I've been like cleaning it and yeah. And yeah, now I have a pile of sawdust to vacuum up because I did a bit of sawing to get some new legs for my new wheels. Um, so Kristen Welker was her response to Trump was like, "You said it's going to be like weeks," and then Trump was like, uh, "You know, it's not a guarantee, but at least by the end of the year." You know, I'm counting on the military for distribution. So I guess if you doubt that it can be distributed by the end of the year, then you're doubting the military, and you're a military hater. Yeah, Kazoom, because nothing beats a great pair of legs. See, I'm old enough to remember that commercial, just like you, Kazoom. Um, don't make me fucking call you on my fucking phone and add you to my fucking coverage of the debate. I already talked to you about the debate. Kazoom in my chat, everyone. He's from the Breakfast Club too. We already talked about this shit, but just not a lot of my perspective. Me and Kazoom were like watching Joe go off on people in the chat. Um, so, Kristen Welker was like, what steps would you take to give Americans confidence in the vaccine? She was talking to Joe Biden. And Biden said, well, I'd make sure that it's transparently made and given transparently. And then he attacked Trump on his timeline of promises, which I thought was a very good moment. 1 point for Joe Biden, right? Um, and then Trump was like, you know, Biden said we're going to have a dark winter, and Trump was like, I don't think we're going to have a dark winter. And then he said that Biden ran the H1N1 response poorly, and he said, but and Biden called me xenophobic when I shut down the Chinese border, and yeah, that's something that you have to really parse out. Like there was a timeline to that, and I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking that Donald Trump is a racist. You know, that's my knee jerk reaction for him too. So I don't blame Joe Biden for thinking that he's racist. But yeah, in hindsight, the Chinese border closing was, the Chinese immigration closing was good. But I think we should have shut down all incoming people at all at that point. And we didn't. Not that it would have made a difference, because Trump's bungling would have made any sort of outbreak anywhere to be exactly where we are right now. I mean, it didn't matter where it came from as far as the vector. It could have been, people going to Spain, then Italy, then Canada, then crossing the border from Canada, and they're nice Canadian white people that we like. You know, it any sort of infection was going to blow up under a Trump administration because he didn't want to make a national response. He didn't want to have lockdowns, and he threw gasoline on the fire as far as people who also don't want lockdowns. Um, yeah, America's unique in that way, where we have that ungovernable independent streak. So Trump also said in that segment that we have no choice. We have to face this. And I wanted Biden to just like turn right over to him and say, "We had a choice. You forced this on us." Right? That was a lost moment. I'm not taking any points from House Biden on that one, but it was a lost moment. It might have been because of Mike's being muted. Um, Trump said, "I can't live in a basement. We're learning to live with it." And then Biden said, "No, uh, people are dying from it. They're learning to live with the deaths of their loved ones." It was a good moment. Um, there was a back and forth there where each one of them was like, "No, no, no, hold on, Kristen, I need a quick redirect." I need, and then she relents with a couple of seconds, and then the other side is like, "I need to respond to that. Give me a couple seconds," and it's like, how many couple seconds are you going to give to everyone? You know, I think everyone at the end of this is this year is going to be like, we need like real debate rules where people just have to live with what was said and not say, oh, well, he talked about this, so I have to be able to respond. You get some time, you're supposed to respond in that time. You know, that's the rules. Proctor says, I think we should mandate that people researching viruses should do it on ships and take 6 month contracts and quarantine periods, keep it in tightly contained environments. How about, hear me out here, we just put a station in Antarctica? You know, I think if you have them on a ship, there's a chance that, like, I don't know, dolphins or whales or some shit might get the virus from them, and then, like, then somebody's gonna, catch a dolphin in some tuna net, you know, and it'll be one of those brands of tuna that isn't dolphin safe, and then we're all gonna get it. Kazum said it'd be nice if we had actual debates in the first place. These things that are labeled debates are just media appearance. Yeah, yeah, they're within a certain distance of each other on the same stage, but it's more like Rock'em Sock'em Robots with old people. You know, our old person versus your old person. Um, and that quick redirect, Trump was like, "It's China's fault," and then Biden was like, "Trump failed on the response when it got here." And then Trump was like, "He called me xenophobic, and that I shouldn't have closed down travel from China." And Biden was like, "Well, it was a different context." And the context is, it's really easy to just jump to conclusions that the president is racist. You know, you kind of think that that's the motivation of everything he does. Kind of understandable. Yeah, Proctor, you're right. We should not have virus study in high population cities. But then you're going to have to pay those virologists a little bit more money to live in, buttfuck Egypt. That's just how it works. You got to pay more money if you're going to have people with, advanced degrees working where there's no chance for them to be able to see a Maroon 5 concert. Or in this case, I guess it would be BTS. Um, so next, Kristen Welker was like, what do you say to Americans that think the cost of shutdowns is worse than the exposure to the virus? And this is something that I've had to have fights about on Facebook with friends of mine who are also liberals. So this is like a near and dear to my heart question. So when she asked that, I was like, this is going to bring it out to where those friends of mine who are liberals are going to have to hear their words come out of the president's mouth. And I was not disappointed. So Biden said that he's going to shut down the virus, not the country. Uh, he said it was all about Trump's ineptitude and his golfing. And Trump was like, he took like a whole nother minute for a response there when he shouldn't have had a response. The question wasn't to him. And then he's like, all he talks about are shutdowns. My son got it, and the next thing I know, he doesn't have it. And then, like, school should reopen. And then, like, Kristen Welker, like, cut him off at the pass. And she was like, no, people who are young can also get it and also be affected negatively by it. It's like when you have to corral the president and correct him so that, like, dangerous misinformation doesn't go out on the broadcast and lead people to think that it's okay for their kids to get the coronavirus. Holy shit. You know, wow. And I'm not sure that everyone like appreciated that moment. Um, so Kristen Welker was then addressing Trump, and she said, you've been insisted that schools reopen in person, and Boston just went all online after Spike. What do you say to scared parents? And this kind of affects me because I went to go see my niece and nephew, knowing that they were going to start school that would be partially in person, and I went there thinking I'm not going to see these parts of my family until Christmas, maybe. If there's a spike where they're living, maybe I won't go. Maybe I'll just like drop off some presents on their front freaking porch because I ain't getting dead by the Rona. That ain't happening. You know, especially not by my nephew's Rona. Fuck that. Um, so Trump was like, I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to teachers is small. We can't keep the country closed. Depression, alcohol, drugs, suicide, abuse. The cure can't be worse than the problem. And I was like, this sounds exactly like a guy named Patrick who I've been fighting with on Facebook, who's a friend of mine, who is also liberal. And like all the president's talking points right there were all the things that Patrick was like nitpicking at me. And I'm like, there you go. Why are you even blue? You know, you sound like the president. Um, but yeah, the way that he said the transmittal rate to teachers is small, I'm like, so there's an acceptable number of teachers that'll die. It's a small number of teachers that are going to die, but it's acceptable. And I think one thing we don't realize is that tenured teachers are often really fucking old. You know, so there's a lot of teachers that probably don't want to go back to work with the coronavirus basically being a 15% chance that they'll die. So they've got to retire early, find some other thing to do for a while, and that takes all the most experienced teachers out of the schools, and then our children are getting younger teachers. You know, it's not like there's a teacher shortage or anything, right? Anyways, Biden's response to that, he did not respond to the whole thing where, uh, you know, there's an acceptable number of teachers that are going to get it. The transmittal rate is small. Like, yeah, but it's going to kill some old teachers. Biden didn't respond to that. He's like, we need to be able to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, and we need to have safe open guidelines. And uh, then he was sarcastic and said, not that many teachers will die. But I felt like it was like an afterthought. And the whole like walk and chew bubblegum at the same time just reminded me of Rowdy Roddy Piper's scene in They Live. Like, I've come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum. I've run out of bubblegum. Um, yeah, I've actually done the numbers on the schools that are in the Denver area. I did this on Facebook, and this is my liberal friend Patrick has been, you know, we can't live in our basements forever. But I've done the numbers, and for like a 3,000 person school, which we have a couple high schools that have that many students, you might have one child die if they all get it. one out of those like 3,000 may die. And you're going to have probably five teachers, and 5% of those students are going to have grandparents living with them, at least 5%. And then of those, you're going to have those grandparents, depending on what age they are, you're going to have some students dealing with deaths in the family because they take it home with them. Um, it's not like you can have a student get it safely, like an elementary school student get it, and then expect that there's a 100% chance that he's not going to be living with his grandma, because that's America right now. We got a lot of irresponsible people who have like given up on parenting their child. What they go off and you know uh, party it up, and they leave their kids with their grandparents to like raise the next generation. This happens a lot. A lot of those people are my clients because I'm an addiction counselor. So like I know that you can't say, "Oh, it's okay for elementary school kids to get it because they're almost uh, immune to the effects." Like they run into other people. They live with some of those other people that they're going to be running into. So, um, yeah. Anyways, Trump was like, plexiglass is not the answer. It's expensive. New York is dying. And I was like, this is a perfect example of Trump putting money over people's safety. And Biden did not call him on it, right? That was the perfect moment to say, motherfucker, I don't care how much money needs to get spent. People are dying. He's like, New York is dying because it's costing businesses money. I'm like, fucking put your priorities in the right place. You know, if it costs that business a little bit extra money to put up plexiglass, at least they're not going to kill anyone. You know, Hmm. It costs money to cook the food. Why not just serve it all raw? Because we don't want to kill everybody. You know, um, so Biden was like, New York has handled their curve, and I don't look at this as red versus blue states like he does. I see a United States, and that was like really really corny, but I thought it was a good way of just shining light on how Trump is doing things that will affect blue states worse instead of the red states. And this is not just about the coronavirus. He tried to uh, keep federal funding for fighting fires from California while it was on fire. You know, and why? Because fuck California. That's basically what it is. California's a blue state. He doesn't like blue states. Um, so then Trump was like, New York has lost 40,000 people, and look at Pennsylvania, look at Michigan, look at North Carolina. They're getting killed in business. We need to protect seniors. And I was like, what the fuck does protecting seniors have to do with getting killed in business? Because like, you're actually you're kind of contradicting yourself. Because if we needed to protect seniors, we would have those safe opening protocols in. But the states that he named were all in play this election. That's the key there. He doesn't care about the rest of the fucking country. He just cares about his reelection, right? Um, so Kristen Welker, she was like talking to Trump. She was like, "You insulted Fauci. how are you going to get along with scientists? And then Trump was like, well, Fauci said don't wear a mask, and he said I don't think this will be a problem, and I even think he's a Democrat. I'm not knocking him because nobody knew. I'm like, motherfucker, the whole world knew, and the whole rest of the world has handled this better. Jesus Christ. And yeah, I'm going to say that Fauci was wrong to go along with don't buy masks, in order to let hospitals buy masks. That whole the CDC was lying to us thing, and like a whole bunch of the government was all lying to us in unison. That was a bad thing, right? I understand what they were trying to do, but it was horrible. Um, Biden responded to that. He was like, I think about what the president knew in January and he didn't tell the American people, and that was, Bob Woodward had that interview with Trump where he was recording him, and then Biden was like brain farting the name of Bob Woodward, the guy from the Watergate uh, investigation. Like he's a famous fucking journalist, right? And this should have been something that was like prepped in the debate prep for him, but he brain farted Bob Woodward's name. He looks right to Kristen and he's like, "One of your colleagues," right? And I was like, they call it a stutter, and they say that certain words he just can't get out of his mouth, so he'll go for an alternate word. But it looks a little bit worse than that, and I tell you what, if you look back at the debate between Biden and Sarah Palin, nobody was saying that he had a stutter then, and he kind of mopped the floor with her. I'm just saying. I think this whole stutter thing is being blanketly used as a cover for some mental decline. Here I am, a Democrat, but I'm willing to say he's not the same guy he was, 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago. He's getting on in age, right? And I thought brain farting Bob Woodward's name. Nobody's saying this in the media. It's just something that I picked out. But I look for these things. Um, Biden said Americans don't panic, and Trump panicked. Um, and that's basically saying that Trump should have trusted Americans to understand that this was a horrible virus coming our way, and not worried about like how we would panic in that time. I mean, I did remember like stores empty of toilet paper, you know, and a lot of other like non-perishable items, canned soup, beans, rice, that kind of stuff. I think we still have some cans that we overbought for food that I'm trying to work into our cuisine. And yeah, I don't like eating out of a can all the time. Just today, uh, we had some soup that had some green beans in it, from a can because we bought too many of them. But yeah, we're kind of cycling through all that. I can't find Barks root beer at the store right now. Some motherfuckers keep on buying that one type of soda out. You know, you guys know I don't drink Mountain Dew anymore, so if I do drink a soda, I want it to be the one that I want, right? But there's certain little things at the stores, even now, as people know that there's probably going to be a spike in the winter, that there's certain things that are missing. So maybe there's some merit to what Trump was thinking. That if he caused a panic, it might be uh, worse than what actually happened. But I remember a panic. I remember going to the store. This was the worst thing that happened when I went to a store. I remember some really freaked out homeless people that were crying because, like, they don't have pantries where they store their food. They have to go to the grocery store every day to get some food to eat, or go to, a soup kitchen, something like that. But they don't have refrigerators. They just buy it when they need it from the grocery store. And when they were watching all the groceries leaving the grocery store, they were freaked out in front of the grocery store, begging for food and just like crying. Like the scene that I saw was horrible, you know. And yeah, Proctor says buy A&W, it's better. I'm not telling you this as an addiction counselor. I'm just going to say Barks root beer has caffeine. Taking my addiction counselor hat off for when I say this. Barks root beer has caffeine. A&W does not. Okay, and you guys are you guys are arguing about like the better root beer, but really it's about the drugs in it. I can't find a goddamn root beer with fucking drugs in it. Okay? Welcome, William, to the chat. It was just Kazoom and Proctor Hawk leapfrogging before you. Um, anyways, I'm drinking lemonade right now that I made in a Fuzzies cup. Fuzzies. It's taco o'clock somewhere. I like that they put like addiction like sayings on their cups. That it's kind of ironic, and so I like collecting their cups. Um, so Biden was saying something about like Trump's family went to Wall Street and told everyone to sell short, like when they knew that the pandemic was coming, and there was some of that going on, right? Um, and then Trump was like, "You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street. You take their money. I don't take any money." Which is weird. He's kind of projecting there because we have proof that he's gotten a lot of money from foreign interests and a lot of different business deals. We have those parts of his tax records that the New York Times got, and they keep on leaking stories about that. Biden's response to "you take Wall Street's money" was, "my average contribution is $43," which was a weak response. I was like, oh my God, -1 point Biden, especially because I was a Bernie supporter and I know his average contribution was more like around 27 for a while. So I'm like, ah, it was just so weak. So then Christian Walker was like, Russia and Iran are trying to influence the election. What would you do to put an end to this threat? And so then Biden, without going into like specifics, he was like, any country that interferes with elections will pay a price. And I'm like, but what price is that they're going to pay? The, it's going to be expensive. So then like Trump was like, Joe got $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife, and someday you'll have to explain that, Joe. There's been nobody tougher on Russia than me. And that was another him talking in superlatives. Um, he's like, I sold tank busters to Ukraine, and Crimea happened on Joe's watch. Now, in this moment, he didn't actually say the word Crimea, right? He's like that portion of the Ukraine. So that was Trump's mental flub right there because he didn't even know the word Crimea. Uh, well, he probably would recognize it if he saw it, but in that moment, he could not recall that Crimea was what happened on Joe's watch. So then there was like this back and forth, and then Biden was like, "But your taxes," and Trump was like, "My taxes are fine. I've prepaid millions and millions." Like, God, and he can keep saying lies like that in order to get reelected because we don't have his full tax returns. Meanwhile, here I am knowing that the New York Times just let it leak like that morning that there was this Chinese account that he didn't declare in his financial declarations to be the president that had millions of dollars pumped into it, and it came from no business that he has declared, and it was like Jesus, like he's up there accusing Biden and his family of doing exactly what he's doing. The projection was a lot. It was a lot. Good afternoon, Shepard. And Shepard's like, I'll watch Mike talk about this thing, and then I'll leave a comment that says nobody cares about what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm the only one that cares. Really, there's 8 concurrent viewers right now, but seriously, I finish the projects that I start. Right, started covering these debates years and years ago. When they happen, I just give my opinion so that somebody 100 years from now can do some internet archaeology and find my videos and find out what I thought about it. That's all. Like you guys, like I would still be talking about what I was talking about if I didn't take the moment to to just address Bruce in the comment section. See, Proctor Hawk was like New York Times always magically obtains tax info on the day of the debates. There's a lot of information that's been held for like October surprises, including Rudy's hands down his pants thing, all that. They hold it so that they can have like the maximum effect on the election. I would have rather they just let shit fly exactly when they get it. Like, forget timing. I mean, do you think anyone's voting on anything else but the coronavirus? Like, seriously, this is my prediction. Trump loses in a landslide, and nobody cares about anything but my life is shit because of coronavirus, and I keep on having to hear that fucking word. You know? And I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that some of the actual policy that they were debating meant something. I wish that, you know, I was rooting for Bernie in the primaries, and some of the policy that Bernie was trying to put forth is now gone. It's off the table, and yet Trump will accuse Biden of being Bernie, of being a secret socialist. I'm like, no, those of us who would have put forth some of those progressive ideas, we're already in mourning. Like, we don't need the election to happen to know that we're not getting free education in our country like other countries have. You know, and, and so yeah, it's it. Proctor says, "Are we really surprised with October surprises?" No, we're not. And really, like, how much of an effect did Borat's movie have? None. Like, at least a couple million people have already voted. Like, if you don't do it like before they send out the ballots, which in Colorado is October 9th, you know, that day you could like fill it out and drop it in. Anything that happens during that month after people have already voted, those people can't change their votes. They've already submitted them. You know, Poseidon says, considering your horrible 2016 prediction, I'd bet on Trump winning. Um, you know, I have to own that. That was the first election that I was wrong. In my whole voting life, that was the first one that I did not pick who the winner would be. Um, and everything after that, everything has been just a new world where there is a possibility that I am out of touch. Um, so Biden, in response to Trump saying that he's prepaid millions and millions, uh, he said he was smart to pay little in taxes, which is a quote that you can find from Trump. And then Trump was like, "I'm the victim of a witch hunt. They spied on me. I could find dirt on you if I paid $1 million. Your family takes money all over the place, and I think they kick some back to you." And then Kristen Welker was like, "Mr. Biden, was your son's business in China or Ukraine unethical?" And Biden's, of course, he's like, "No." Um, but then he's like, and Trump tried to bribe Ukraine to say something negative about me, which is one way to look at it. They were going to withhold funding from Ukraine as far as aid packages, and yeah, that was a thing. That was a scandal like a whole year ago. Nobody remembers. Trump was like, his son didn't have a job for a long time, and then they started paying him 3 million and then like 108K a month, and I was like, okay, coronavirus that has nothing to do with the shit that we're in right now, right? Um, there's a lot of people who get jobs based on their name recognition when they are not worth that much money, and I don't look at them and say, "Oh, I wish they didn't make that much money." I say like I wish the rest of us could make good money, you know. But under Trump's economic plan, there's a lot of us that will still have stagnant wages, but the stock market's going to keep on going up. So yeah, um, to think that you have to be anointed and be already from a rich family to be making riches like that. How dare you go from making nothing to making a lot of money? Proctor doesn't think that we're going to get an election night result. Um, I'm going to be staying up on election night to watch the results as they come in. But I also have something else I got to do because on November 4th, which is midnight on November 3rd, uh, they're going to open the enrollment for my final semester of grad school. And if I don't get in there in the first 5 minutes that it is live, I won't be able to get the section of the class that I want, which will make the time that I do class out of whack with the rest of my schedule. And just to optimize, my work and downtime and whatnot, I got to be like hovering over the the little icon when it goes live and keep refreshing the screen. So I'll be up that night anyway. Um, Shepard says next time AOC says we're all gonna die in 12 years, I'm telling her we're waiting it out, and if we're still alive, we're tar and feathering the lying bitch. Wow, harsh. Poseidon says NBC paid Chelsea Clinton $1 million a year as a reporter, and she gave a total of 3 appearances for that money. I I don't measure it in just appearances though. How many columns did she write? How many things did she uh, help work on? There's probably a little bit more work that she did for that $1 million. But was that work worth more than 50,000 that some other journalist is getting paid to be a part of NBC? Probably not. So yeah, $1 million fucking salary. I hope it came with a fucking book deal so that they could fucking recoup their money. Oh, Spurgle Farm says AOC said that 2 years ago, so we only have 10 years left. Let me tell you something. It's a snowstorm right now here in Denver, right? Got that funk up in the mountains behind Boulder. He's fucking uh, probably under 12 inches of snow, which is a good thing because we had the two largest wildfires in Colorado history happening at the same time, right? The top three largest fires ever in Colorado have happened this year, right? We're talking lots and lots of square miles. It would be all four if you counted the one that's like crossed the Wyoming border, right? So these things are happening in increasing frequency, and I think especially Bruce in the chat should be worried about this because he lives in Florida, which is kind of a magnet for hurricanes. And where I used to live in Lake Charles, they got hit with two hurricanes back to back this year, and one of them was a Cat 4, and you don't hear shit about Lake Charles having to need like uh, recovery efforts or anything right now. You should be hearing about it, but this is going to start a bit of racial tension in Louisiana because when it was Katrina and it hit New Orleans, and there was a bunch of black people to be exploited for the cameras by mainstream media, um, that was something that got a lot of press, and they held Trump's toes to the fire. Not Trump, Bush. They were like, "Hey, this is your fault that FEMA is a disaster and all that, right?" But we just had a Cat 4 hurricane hit Lake Charles, which is 3-4 hours away from there. But Lake Charles is filled with a bunch of white people, and it's harder to get that camera on them and say, "Oh, look at these poor minorities that we really care about." Um, Actually, part of it is that it's a lot of Trump supporter minority people, or sorry, non-minority people. So it's like the just how Trump has the whole "I want to care about the red states and not the blue." The media wants to care about people who would vote Democrat rather than people who would vote Republican. You know, they're not putting cameras on Lake Charles like they should. Um, and this is going to cause a lot of divisiveness in that region when they don't get uh, the same sort of funding for recovery. And this happened when there was Hurricane Katrina and the Hurricane Rita. Rita hit the Lake Charles area and did a whole bunch more damage as far as property wise, and they did not get that attention from Rita that people that got hit by Katrina got. And so it it's like when another hurricane hits, and say it hits New Orleans, the black people of New Orleans and Baton Rouge will get on the highway, Highway 10, and they will drive to Houston to see family there to get away from the hurricane, but they are not going to stop in Lake Charles because of that racial tension. Lake Charles is like a drive-through city. Don't stop. Don't fucking go there. Right? That's how bad it is. Like, don't stop in Beaumont either. That's where they fucking drug James Byrd from the back of a truck. Right? Go all the way to Houston. Make sure you fill up on gas first while you're in Baton Rouge, and then go all the way to Houston without stopping. That's how fucking bad it is. And, you know, I can see it being perpetuated right now. So Shepard said, "Did the snow put out all the fire?" Where it hit, um, and I think part of the Calwood fire was probably completely extinguished, but the Cameron Peak fire and the Left Hand Canyon fire, uh, well, probably the Left Hand Canyon fire got extinguished. I don't know yet, and the snow isn't done. It's still snowing until like tomorrow at noon. So if it gets 12 inches in those areas, it's definitely going to put out all the fire. That's our rule of thumb. And so the fact that it got that funk is buried under snow right now, well, he's just collateral damage. We need it. So keep doing your rain dances, Bruce. Um, God, you guys keep on knocking me off my subject. I'm never going to get through all this. So Kristen Welker was like, she was talking to Trump, and she was like, "How can voters know that you have no foreign interests?" And Trump was like, "Well, I have bank accounts all over the world. Biden's family is the one getting rich from foreign countries." And then Biden was like, "Not true." And it was weak, and he didn't call out, the obvious nepotism of the Trump family, you know, and especially they're very hard to understand part of the New York Times coverage of Trump's taxes, whereby it's been proven that uh, Ivanka Trump got consulting fees for deals where she was also part of a company where she was getting paid to be a part of the company that she was the outside consultant for. So she's getting like two different jobs worth of money with the same job, you know. Um, there's so many different, like, really intricate things to uh, those tax reports that are coming out of the New York Times. It's like I don't even think that uh, most people have read it because coronavirus. Who the fuck cares? He's fucking fucked up, and people have already made their decision. You know, so why did they wait on this as long as they did? You know, they tried to throw it out like an October surprise. It shouldn't have been saved that long. Um, Christian Welker was like, "Would you make China pay?" And Biden was like, "I would make sure China plays by the rules, unlike Trump. Trump makes friends with dictators and pokes our friends in the eye, and this is a standard stump speech thing for him." And then Trump was like, "China is paying. Uh, I got our farmers' money from China." And then Biden was like, "No, that's taxpayer money." And Trump was like, "No, it's not. It was money from China." And to me, that was like Biden was right, but it's kind of like the border wall thing. Trump was like, "I'm going to get Mexico to pay for it," and what has been paid for has been paid for by taxpayer money. And I wish Biden would have said that in that moment, so people would get that that recall of, oh yeah, this is a pattern where he says that other people are paying for things when it's actually us taxpayers paying for it. Hmm. -1 point, Joe Biden. So then Biden was like, the reason he's bringing up this malarkey about this is he doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. And I was like, okay. Trump started disrupting him right there and started mocking him. He's like, he's a typical politician. Joe, you can do better. And that tactic works with a certain type of voter where they see that Trump is like in control of the debate. If Trump's giving tips to Biden, like table talk, like hey, you can play better with this, trying to make the game better. People are there's a certain type of person who gets turned on by that. Just good tactic by Trump as far as you know talking to his base by saying I got this. I'll just give him a little help here. Because we're playing with our toy, like a cat with a mouse. You know, um, Kristen Welker was like, North Korea just rolled out a big ICBM. Is that a betrayal? And then Trump was like, Barack told me we would have a war with North Korea, and now I have a good relationship with Kim Jong Un, and that's why we didn't have a war. And then Kristen Welker was like, she starts talking to Biden. She's like, North Korea tested 4 nukes during your administration. Why do you think you could reign in Kim Jong Un? And then Biden was like, we'll make sure we control them by using our allies. And then Trump talks about his good buddy when he's a thug. And the Korean Peninsula should be nuclear free. But then there's this like disruptive back and forth talk. He's like, it sounds like the first fucking debate. Um, so Kristen Welker changed the subject. She was like, healthcare. Let's just go to healthcare. And so she said, if the Affordable Care Act is repealed, what will you do for the 20 million people who lose their health insurance? And she was directing it at Trump. And Trump was like, I got rid of the individual mandate. That was the worst part of the Affordable Care Act. Which is not the fucking answer to the question, right? But he says that just to like stoke the fire of his base because he did something to undo something that the black president did. You know, he's like premiums are down, and no matter how you run the Affordable Care Act, it won't work. And uh, I like to run a much better healthcare that will always protect people with pre-existing conditions. People love their healthcare, and he would terminate their plans. And Biden wants socialized medicine. And then Trump got his mic cut, and I was like, "Wow, they actually did it." They're like, "You've talked too long." Bloop. So then Biden was like, "Obamacare with a public option equals Biden care." Um, he'd reduce premiums and prescription prices, which Trump did a little bit of that. He said he'd allow Medicare to negotiate, which is a little bit of Bernie Sanders' answer. Okay. Um, he said he'd support private insurance, which is not a Bernie Sanders answer. Um, he said no one with private insurance will lose their insurance under my plan. Due to Trump's mismanagement of COVID and the economy, 10 million people have already lost their health care because it's connected to their jobs. Now, when you read into what he's saying there, it's basically saying we shouldn't have health care connected to our jobs, which would lead one to think that the obvious solution to that would be universal health care. When he's like, he wants to take it away from 22 million more people by repealing the Affordable Care Act. Which Trump denies, but I think is probably the case. You know, Kristen Welker then asked Biden. He's like, Trump said you want socialized health care, do you? And Biden was like, that's ridiculous. The difference between the president and I is that I don't think of affordable health care uh, as a privilege. I think of it as a right, right? And then I was like, I paused the video then. And I was like, if you think healthcare is a right, of affordable healthcare is right, then you're wanting the government to step in to protect that right, which is government healthcare, you know, getting involved in our life. It's a step towards socialized medicine. You know, they don't want the term socialized on anything as a label because it turns off a certain type of voter. But basically, he just conceded exactly what she was saying. Um, yeah, people are so afraid of certain words, you know, well, as if every word means Nazi, you know. Um, Dynacat says when the court kills the ACA, Biden will have no other choice but Medicare for all. Blessing in disguise? Um, maybe. You know, I'm one of those people that I feel like I benefit either way. One way is that all my clients will have health care if Medicare for all comes around, and the other way, I'm thinking, if we don't have Medicare for all, we still have insurance companies and all that. I'll be able to bill for more, just as a therapist. So I'll make money, and then I'll try to, put money in good causes. You know, maybe donate some money to, I guess, whoever is going to be running against Mitch McConnell. Which, by the way, did you all see Mitch McConnell's bruises on his hand and on his lips, his fucking blue lips? And he's like, "Oh, there's nothing wrong." I'm like, "You got bruises like that on your hand? It's probably from you getting IV injections in your hand from the IVs that they stick in your hand, and them blowing a vein, you know." And the way that his lips were blue, I was like, I don't know. That was either a fall or he's hypoxic, which means he should probably be in a hospital. Or here's the weird thing. Or maybe Mitch McConnell was for a little bit of time uh, laid up with an apparatus that goes down your throat and pushes on your lips and bruises them. What kind of apparatus is that? A respirator for COVID. You know, I want to know where those bruises fucking came from. Did he fall? Did he have to have some machine on him? Did he have IV in his hand, or did he like try to brace his fall? I want to know. I want to know where the bruises came from because his hand looks like the mummy, like an unwrapped mummy. It's fucking bad. It looks like frostbite. It's fucking bad. Anyways, um, how did I got all these people chatting on my fucking video? Um, Shepard says WAP. He wants me to sing the Cardi B song, or he's going to cover the Cardi B song. I don't know. Dynacat says it won't be under Biden's control. It'll come from Congress. Yeah, that is a good point. What we need to do is make sure that if Biden were to get into office, that we give him at least the first 2 years of you know a good Congress to work with. That's what Obama had, and then had 6 years of obstructionist Republican uh, dragging their feet, kind of just trying to keep anything from making the floor filibustering bullshit. You know, so yeah, if Biden got in and did not have a Congress to match his political leanings, then we'd just be getting nothing done. The only way the Affordable Care Act got put into place was it was the first thing that Obama tried working on. That happened in that first 2 years, and then like the last 6 years, it was all about like trying to tear it apart. Um, so Trump was making that point again at this point in the debate, and he's like, the difference between uh, me and him is he had 47 years in office and did nothing, and his vice president Kamala is more liberal than Bernie Sanders, and they'll ban fracking too, by the way. And it's the healthcare segment, but he's just going to throw in odd topics. So Biden was like, people deserve to have affordable health care, and he keeps talking about it, but he hasn't done a thing. And I'm like, well, you know, Trump's trying to say that Biden didn't do anything. And I'm like, well, Biden was the vice president when the Affordable Health Care happened, or the Affordable Care Act happened. Um, so Trump was all like, he's talking socialism. He'll ruin your Medicare and your Social Security. Bernie tried it in his state, and it was impossible to work. It doesn't work. And then Biden was like, he's a very confused man because he thinks he's running for president against somebody else, but he's running against Joe Biden. And I beat all of them because I disagreed with them. And then at this point, Trump had this like glimmer of thought in his eyes. If you look at the footage, because Trump was like, aha, I got you. Because what he's trying to do is he's trying to keep the Biden campaign from being able to pull in Bernie supporters, right? And so he keeps talking about fracking because he knows that the Bernie Bros want fracking banned. And anytime that Joe Biden says he's not going to immediately ban fracking, the Bernie Bros get a little upset. You know, if he points out that Biden doesn't support Medicare for all or universal health care, he knows that the Bernie Bros get upset. He's trying to sow division. He's very good at that. So point Trump in that point. Um, Biden went on to say, like, if Trump is president, Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023. And I would say at this point that would maybe be true because you know, you have to fund it with something, and Trump postponed everyone's payments on Social Security through the end of the year, and I wonder if he's going to kick that can down the road, indefinitely to try to get like a end around stimulus check to people who work instead of giving money to all Americans. He only wants people who are working to get these checks because part of those, a good swath of those people who aren't working, uh, they aren't going to vote for him, right? So he doesn't care about them. But by raising the bar for getting the stimulus to only people who work are going to be stimulated monetarily. What he did with that, putting off everyone having to pay their Social Security taxes through the end of the year, what he did was he targeted a demographic that was more likely to vote for him, and another demographic of people who believe in the Puritan work ethic of if you don't work, you shouldn't get anything. So, kind of ingenious there, that end around stimulus that he's been doing. But it is going to defund a lot of social programs, Social Security and Medicare, if he doesn't get to taking that money from people, from everyone who's working. So Trump was like, "Look at Biden's voting record, and he's attacked Social Security before. And if I get elected, the stock market will boom. If he gets elected, it'll crash. Which I'm not sure, like either way, that the stock market or at least part of the economy isn't going to crash after this election. You know, either way. I mean, the Rona, if it has another spike, it's going to affect markets and all that. But um, Biden was like, the only measure of health of the economy he has is the stock market. But where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, people are hurting. And this was a cheap pop. You might know it from professional wrestling, where you call out the city that you are in that week, and then like the crowd goes wild. Well, the cheap pop there was say Scranton and Claymont because they're in Pennsylvania, which is a state that's in play, and it's a very important state. It's in fact the most touted as important state of all of them as far as who's going to win this election. So him being from there and reminding people of that is, you know, cheap pop, but it's effective. Um, Biden was like, "Well, what happens to the ordinary people?" And then Trump was like, "401ks are through the roof." He isn't really from Pennsylvania, and people of Pennsylvania will show you that. So he's attacking his Pennsylvania heritage, you know. But yeah, my 401k has recovered from uh, the downturn that it had during the March stock market crash. And I would say that year to date, from January to now, I think I'm up in my 401k 5%, which is, not a good return, but, and definitely not through the roof, but it's a lot better than a loss, which it was in March. So yeah, that recovery of the stock market has been, good for my 401k in that I'm not looking at less money this year than I had before. Um, but I have no confidence that the stock market isn't going to have another crash. And that's because Trump's still piloting the ship. Poseidon says that Dynacat's smoking peyote in my chat. Jipperson, welcome. Um, let's see. I'm trying to get through all this. Kristen Welker was then like, well, why haven't we seen a relief bill? And then Trump was like, Nancy Pelosi is holding up stimulus because she thinks it benefits her on election day, and I disagree. And then Biden was like, there are Republicans who don't think that they can pass a bill, and why aren't you talking to them as the president? And I didn't really see us getting another $1,200 stimulus check out of that whole discussion at all. In fact, as a contract worker, I didn't really see any benefit to the end around stimulus that he did by people not having to do like weekly deductions for Social Security. So I'm really not seeing any uh, stimulus or relief coming my way for a while. And I'm just going to accept that because they're just going to fight about it. Like, even after the election, they're going to fight about, should we give stimulus to people who maybe don't deserve it? How do we make sure that it only goes to the people that we like? You know, um, how do we make sure that all of our little pet projects are paid for, uh, and not just the projects that they want to fund? That kind of shit. Um, Kristen was then like, well, why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal passed, Mr. Biden? And then Biden was like, they passed the HEROES Act in the summer. It's been sitting there. And McConnell said, let's let them go bankrupt. And so that is the thing. Like the Heroes Act is out there. And then like Trump was like, that bill was passed as a bailout of badly run high crime Democrat cities and states. It was also to give money to immigrants, which will take that'll just make more immigrants come here, And then Biden hit him again with the whole. I don't see red states and blue states. I see the United States. So yeah, if you're trying to hit the places where the most people are, you're going to hit blue states. The most populous city centers are in blue states. So even in the red states, the blue counties would be the places where you have more population. So if you're trying to hit the most people with the stimulus, you're going to be hitting a lot of blue. And Trump doesn't like that. He likes to kind of try to make sure that the blue voters don't get the money. Um, Kristen Welker was like, "Do you think we need to raise the minimum wage?" And Biden was like, "Yes, and we should pass PPP to help small businesses too." And then Trump was like, "Raising the minimum wage does not help small businesses, and I think it should be a state option, and it'll make small businesses fire their workers." And then Biden was like, "It's not true." He chirped in on that, and because it wasn't in their like protected 2 minutes each, we could actually hear that on the mic. So he got like a little uh, distraction in there. But I think I want to do a whole nother video on that topic aside from this because, yeah, I'm already at like an hour and a half, and I think the debate itself went an hour and a half, and I've only talked about half the debate. Um, Christian Welker was like, "You said that you would consider a $15 minimum wage," and Trump was like, "Well, I think it should be a state option," and then Biden was like, "First responders deserve at least $15 an hour," which is pandering. You know, it's like here's this class of people who we all respect and revere. You know, um, and then would you want them to be paid less than $15 an hour? I don't, but it's pandering the way he said it. And then Biden also said there's no evidence that raising minimum wage loses jobs for people, which um, I'm sure there are studies to back that up, but I'm sure there is a lot of research into undermining that assertion. And I'll have to look at it, and I will get to you guys with a different video on this altogether because I had sort of an epiphany during that time. Basically, that here in my city of Denver, the prevailing wage now is over $15 an hour. So, like, raising the minimum wage to $15 when people working at McDonald's and Panda Express are already making that, what does that actually do to my city versus other cities that don't have the same economy? You know, it doesn't really affect us at all. It really does affect more the poorer rural cities than it does the large city centers and the megalopolises. So at this point, $15 an hour, it's not going to help. You know, we need a little bit. You can't live on $15 an hour in Denver as far as getting a one bedroom house apartment. You can't afford to live. So yeah, that'll be a whole other video someday. Um, Kristen Welker was like, let's change the subject to immigration. The U.S. can't locate parents of 500 plus children, which, oh my goodness, I know that the moderator gets to choose the subject, but this is like such a heartstrings puller and not in the favor of Trump. You know, Um, so Trump was like, they used these kids to come here, and we fixed that loophole, and the cages on the borders were built during Biden's administration. And then Biden was like, coyotes didn't bring them over here; their parents did, and he separated them. He makes us a laughing stock as a nation. And then Trump was like, who built the cages, Joe? And then Biden was like, those kids are alone with nowhere to go. And like you could see actual tears in his eyes at that point. And he's like, it's criminal. And then Trump was like, they're in great clean facilities, the best facilities. Who built the cages, Joe? You know? And then I think when people think about like Trump's mightiest moment in that debate, they're going to think about that one, that zinger. Who built the cages? You know? And my response to that is they probably weren't meant to be used exactly the same way you're using them because they're probably just like temporary uh, holding places while they find other things to do. That's not how you're supposed to keep people long term. But you're a different regime. Um, Kristen Welker was just not uh, responding to their answers, and she just moved on. And she's like, "Why should voters trust you with immigration overhaul now?" When she talked to Biden, and he was like, well, we made a mistake and we took too long to get it right. And within my first 100 days, we'll have a pathway to citizenship for 11 million undocumented people. And I was like, oh my goodness, he just lost a whole bunch of possible Republican voters right there. Probably like across the country, based on who I could see watched the debate, at least in the tens of thousands of votes right there. People were like solidified, like, oh, hell no. Uh, yeah. And it's because they just don't want to see undocumented people finding a path to citizenship. They want to send them back to whatever country they came from, you know. And yeah, he lost all those voters right there. But he probably was like, well, I probably won't get their vote anyway, so I'll just be honest about it. But Biden said 20,000 of those people are first responders. We owe them. And I was like, well, there you bring out the first responders again. You know, like, there's something to be revered above all other type of worker. And, it's just pandering. So Trump was like, uh, you had 8 years to do what you were saying, and you did nothing but build cages. You did catch and release. And Biden was like explaining how catch and release worked. And he said, he's made it so people can't get asylum in America anymore. And Trump was like, it just shows he has no understanding of immigration laws. With catch and release, we take murderers and rapists. And I was like, oh my God. Now Trump just lost some Mexican voters because his campaign speech where he said that they're not sending their best, they're sending their murderers and rapists. That just reminded a whole bunch of them, like what he said back in the day. So I was like, oh my God, foot in your mouth. Um, -1 point Trump right there. Um, so then he said less than 1% came back to court, and we had to send ICE and Border Patrol to find them. Which Biden chirped, not true. And then he's like, only those with like the lowest IQ maybe came back to court. And then Joe was like wincing because, you know, uh, on the progressive side, you don't make fun of people's intellect that way, for one. But also, anybody who did come back to court that maybe became a citizen afterward, maybe they're not going to be voting for Trump, even the Cuban ones. So Poseidon in the chat says, "Are you triggered, Snowflake? Good." And catch and release didn't work. Just look up the stats. Um. Okay. He also says Trump will get a higher percentage of both black and Hispanic votes than he did in 2016. I know it hurts. Well, we have yet to see that. But what I can tell you here in Colorado is that our Secretary of State has a Twitter account for herself and also the official Secretary of State Twitter account. And on the 23rd, which is 2 days ago, uh, she put out a tweet with a graphic that showed not what the votes were, but uh, the ballots received by the affiliation, the party affiliation of the person whose ballot was received. Because on the outside of the envelopes, they have a little Scantron thing. They can tell who has turned in their ballot. And we all get like notifications on our email when we vote here. Like they can say, "We got your ballot. You're good." You know. So on the 23rd, these are just numbers that are 2 days old. 400,000 registered Republicans had turned in their ballot. 500,000 unaffiliated voters turned in their ballot, and 600,000 Democrats had turned in their ballot. So that's a lot of unaffiliated voters to be a larger voting bloc in Colorado than the Republican Party. Like people with no party at all outnumber the Republican Party right now as far as voting bloc. That's freaking insane. What do you think has motivated all of those unaffiliated voters to vote this year? I know that oh, Poseidon says, "Who cares about Colorado? You're a failed blue state." Actually, we've leaned blue for the last 20 years. It's kind of a purple state, but um, I don't see us as being failed. I mean, we don't. We're one of those blue states with a large city that doesn't have a large infestation of coronavirus. It's here, but look at our population versus how we've been affected. It's we've been paying attention. We got some smart people here. Um, anyways, there was a back and forth in the debate after that, and then like Kristen Welker was like, racism. We'll talk about racism now, and then like parents have to have the talk. And when she said that, I was like, you mean like the birds and the bees? And then they went on to explain the the talk is telling uh, your black son or daughter that if they don't do the right thing when they get stalked by the cops that they could get killed. And then she's like, "Do you understand why these parents are afraid for their children?" And and Biden was the first to answer, and he's like, "Yes." And then he just rattled off what black parents have to teach their kids regardless of income, you know. And then he said there is institutionalized racism, and this president has stopped progress on that, and I have a plan to do better. And then Trump was like, "Yes, I understand it too." And in 1994, Biden signed a crime bill, and he called blacks super predators. And I've done better for black families than anyone. And it was not Biden who called black people super predators. That was actually the Clinton family. Both Bill and Hillary used that term a lot. Um, and it wasn't like they were calling black people per se super predators. Super predator uh, was a term for, like somebody who commits a whole bunch of crime. Um, but the way that the crime bill ended up affecting minority people a lot more, people now use the term super predator as like, oh, well, you know what that means. Just like people say inner city, you know what that means. Um, when they said super predators, they weren't trying to say black people. They were trying to say people who commit a lot of crimes. The people who say that, that it was that way probably, um, by this point, everyone thinks of it that way. So they're not going to get called out on it. But if you were to actually look at like the actual progression of that bill and the underpinnings of it, the philosophy of it, it was not trying to lock up black people. You know, um, it wasn't directed towards anyone. It just ended up affecting them disproportionately. There, Dynacat's saying it in the chat. Super Predator comes from a study that was part of the basis of the eventual bill. Yeah, and it was all about like how much crime you do, not what color your skin is. But it's turned into a term that they say, oh well, you know what they mean by that. So Biden, uh, he wasn't the one who said super predator. It was said like in clips that I've seen by Bill and Hillary Clinton, which Biden was a big part of the whole process of that bill, and it was around those people who said it. But even though they said it, they didn't mean black people. Trump was saying, we did prison reform, we did criminal justice reform, we did opportunity zones, we gave money to historically black colleges and universities and gave them 10-year long term funding. And then he gave this weird story where he's like, and the only bad thing about that is it means I'm only going to have to see you every 10 years. You know, I don't get to see you guys come to my office as much. And I was like, that is such a weird story. I didn't buy it. Um, Sometimes people just need to know when to shut up. Biden was like, I never said what he accused me of saying. And he avoided saying the word super predator, probably so that they couldn't like take a clip of him saying it and like keep running it as an ad. But he avoided saying it like you would avoid the N word. Like, um, Biden then said in 2000, he said the problem with my crime bill was that there were not enough people in jail. And there's a video on my website of that. And then he said he talked about marauding gangs. He put an ad in the paper for the Central Park Five when they were actually innocent, and he wanted them put to death. He commuted 20 people sentences, and we commuted 1,000. He said there should be no mandatory. Uh, Biden said that there should be no mandatory minimums, and that there should be rehab, not jail for drug offenses. Um, which I will go ahead as an addiction counselor. I'll say I agree, and it makes my job a lot harder when people are trying to rebuild their lives, and I'm trying to help them, but they are saddled with a felony, right? If we could get that taken away, I could fix their lives a little easier. Lead them to productive jobs that they're being kept from by that felony that's drug related. So I agree with that message wholeheartedly. A lot of my job would be easier if I could not have to contend with that, because felonies follow you for fucking ever. They're basically a death sentence in the job world. Um, Trump was like, I ran because you did a poor job. And then Biden looks at the camera. He's like, you know who he is, and you know who I am. And I'm anxious to have this race now. The character of the country is on the ballot. And then Trump was like, he's a corrupt politician. The laptop from hell, which it's a nice catchphrase for the laptop. And then Biden was like, the laptop is fake. Intelligence says so. And then Trump was like, what, Russia, Russia, Russia again? And then that was a nice little back and forth of like two high schoolers right there. But really, I don't believe the Biden laptop is authentic. The whole, it had a Beau Biden Foundation sticker on the outside, and like I would have some stickers right now on my laptop, right? I might have Zoom University, or wash your hands, or you know I'm going viral. That's kind of a play on the whole coronavirus and me being a YouTuber who gets like 5 concurrent viewers on my show, right? So yeah, I might have a couple stickers on it, but like to think that like if I had sensitive information of about me taking money from foreign companies and all that on that laptop, am I dropping it off for repair somewhere, knowing that there's that shit on the hard drive? No. It's like, how fucking stupid do we have to believe that Hunter Biden would be to like drop off a laptop and never come back for it, knowing that all that secret information was on it that was going to get him busted with something? Like, it's such an implausible scenario, you know. But the whole sticker on it thing to me is like, it seems like a plant. It seems too fishy. Like that. How do we know how to make them think that it is part of Joe Biden's family? Oh, I know. We'll take a sticker from his son's foundation and stick it on it, so then there will be more uh, people who are curious. You know, it seems like something that foreign intel might do to just label fake news that they're planting. And at this point, seriously, we see what's coming out of the New York Times, where Trump's family is also corrupt, and it's like it's a wash. They're both corrupt. If you would just believe both, they're both corrupt, and Trump's just a little bit better at getting money than Biden is from foreign countries. That's about it, you know. But yeah, Spurgleberry Farm says those are usually property ID tags. Also, how much crack have you smoked after knocking your system into the hot tub before trying to get it fixed? I've never smoked crack. Partially because as an addiction counselor, I'm not going to get extra credit for trying crack. Nobody's going to give me a bonus, or say good job. Now you know more about the drug and you can help treat people. So yeah, um, but yeah, I doubt the Biden laptop story. I just think that it's weird that he would go to some city that he has no business being in, fly all the way across the country to drop off this laptop to some. And it's weird that they would look on the laptop and like say, "Oh no, this looks like it's actually information that is damning about a presidential candidate. I should turn it into the FBI." You know, the fact that they would even look at what is on the hard drive to me is like, well, I'm never putting any computer of mine in repair at that shop, because they were looking at shit that they really shouldn't have looked at. That's somebody's personal information that's on that hard drive, and you're looking at them like, Just the whole story seems fishy. Like you would never want the whole world to know that at your shop, you actually look at everything that's on the hard drive of all the laptops that get put in for repair. You take a good look at all their emails and all that, and you snoop around and you see if you maybe need to turn in the laptop to the authorities. You'd never want your store known for that. It's just such a fishy fucking story. And it's an October surprise. You know, all of these things together make me think, maybe I don't need to give it a lot of credence. Um, let's see. Kristen Welker, she then said, "What do you say to people who think that you incite hatred and violence, Mr. Trump?" And Trump was like, "The first time I heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting, 'Pigs in a blanket, fry 'em like bacon,' and it was terrible." And I was like, "Oh my God, not the way to answer that question." -1 point. Then he said, "I think I have great relations with all people. I'm the least racist person in the room." Oh, I paused it to laugh at that point. Just the way that he speaks in superlatives that way. Um, he's like, "I got criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones," which was an answer that he gave before, but just reiterating that. Yeah, and Poseidon's like, now I'm laughing at murder cops. No, I'm not laughing at murder cops. I'm just like, that's not the right answer to have to the question, what do you say to people who think you incite hatred? That's not a rebuttal of him inciting hatred. It's him saying this Black Lives Matter movement is actually a hate movement. Go look at that instead of looking at the hatred that I incite. It's just the wrong answer that he gave. It was a misdirection. You know. So then Biden was like, Abe Lincoln over here uh, is the most racist president that we've had in history, and he pours fuel on every single racist fire. He called Mexicans rapists. He tried to do the Muslim ban. He dog whistles to uh, the Proud Boys. But in this moment, Biden said the word "poor boys." If you listen to it, he didn't say "Proud Boys." He said "poor boys." And to me, that's another mental flub, like I described earlier in this video, where I'm like, he's using the wrong word, and people are going to cover it up and say, "Oh no, that's just his stutter. He chose a different similar word." That's not something that he was doing in the debate with Sarah Palin. You know, this is evidence of a little bit of mental decline. Not so much that I don't trust him enough to vote for president for him, but enough that I think that kind of like Ronald Reagan, he might go senile within his term of service. So, yeah, Trump was like, blacks will remember how bad you treated them, and yeah, I I I don't know that people are thinking that Joe Biden was particularly bad to black people, but I don't know that he has the black vote locked up. And I think it was definitely a gaffe earlier in the political season where he was like, if you're not voting for me, you're not black. That was like, so bad. So bad. Like black people don't have their own uh, ability to think and come up with a different conclusion than I need to vote for one thing because of my skin color. So yeah. So Kristen Welker was like, the crime bill got tens of thousands of people locked up for a small amount of drugs. Why should those families vote for you? And then Biden was like, well, we made mistakes. We should not send people to jail when we can send them to treatment. You know, which I think shows that he's willing to admit that he has made a mistake and work to fix it, which Trump will never admit that he made a mistake. He will always double, triple, quadruple down on everything. Um, Trump was like, why didn't he get it done when he had the chance? And Biden's like, we began the process, and then he talks about some of the stuff he did. And then Trump is mocking, he's like, you had 8 years. And then Biden just like calmly says, we had a Republican Congress. And that's the answer. And I was like, that is the answer. That is the true answer. But also, it just seemed oddly weak for him to say that because it's, again, not owning it, it's putting the blame off on other people. But it's true. He couldn't get shit done. At the end of Obama's term, they couldn't pass a Supreme Court justice through with far more time than Amy Coney Barrett is getting through. Merrick Garland was blocked for like a fucking year. So yeah, they couldn't get shit done. Um, Christian Walker asked, "How would you combat climate change and support new jobs?" And Trump was like, "Well, we have the Trillion Trees program," which is weird because there was like this, Team Trees thing that happened, and then like they were just trying to get like 100,000 trees, and then it was like 1 million trees, and then he's like, "We're gonna plant 1 trillion trees." It's like, oh my god. Oh. So he's like, "I want the cleanest water and the cleanest air." And the superlatives just keep on happening. He's like, "We have the best carbon emission numbers in 35 years. China and India are filthy." -1 point Trump. Using the word filthy, in particular, just the word filthy, and mentioning India, you just targeted a whole block of people in a weird, sort of racist way that, yeah, they're not going to forgive. That they use the word filthy, in a different way than other people do, and the way that they're going to take that moment, I'm sure, like India Facebook and India Twitter was like, "Oh my God, he just called us filthy." Um, Filth to them is it's taboo. So yeah, just lost some votes there. Um, he said, "I took us out of the Paris Accord because it was unfair, and we've done an incredible job, and we haven't in, we haven't destroyed our industries." You know. Um, so then Biden was like, climate change is an existential threat, and we will pass the point of no return in 8 to 10 years. Which I believe Shepard in the chat was like, AOC said, 12 years and we're going to be dead. About the same time frame, right? He says 4 years of this man eliminating regulations will lose us our opportunity. My plan will create new jobs, and we'll make charging stations for electric cars all over the place, and retrofit homes, and make sure they're weatherized, and our health care and our jobs. And my plan will create more jobs than his. And Trump was like, his plan is going to cost families more, and AOC plus three developed his plan. And I was like, who's AOC plus three? Is that the squad, or is that like a different group? I don't know. She's she's got like her main gig, and then she's got her side bands, I guess. By the way, I think the best political song uh, this political season was probably "Apocalyptical" by Pussifer. Sorry, um, it's a side band of Maynard James Keenan from Tool, and it's got surprisingly few lyrics to it, but just the story behind it that he wrote the song after getting COVID himself, and then being angry at the botched response by Trump, and then wrote a political song. I've been wanting for better political songs, this whole season, and back when Bush was in office, we had a lot of angst. I mean, there was some good Nine Inch Nails music coming out, some good Rage Against the Machine, and fucking, there hasn't been much for my taste as far as good politically fueled anger music. So, uh, Poseidon says Obama promised if you like your doctor and your health care, you can keep them. The Whopper of the century, LMAO. Um, yeah, and Biden said the same in this same debate as well. If you go back and look at the footage, and I retold that earlier on in the video. Um, Dynacat says we already passed the point of no return, and there's a lot of people who feel that way, and uh, I'm one of them that also believes like we've done irreparable harm to our climate, and in my lifetime, it's not going to get better. You know, I do believe that by getting away from fossil fuels, we can stop a lot of cancer. But as far as the strength of hurricanes and the wildfires that are tearing apart my state right now, and all that, yeah, we're kind of just now seeing the worst of it. But it just gets worse every year. Like we get a new worst of it, you know. The fact that all three of the top three biggest fires in Colorado history have all happened this year is to me is like whoa. You say that we have the cleanest air, and I'm like, look at the air quality indexes around like Oregon and California and Colorado with all the fires going. We've had air worse than Beijing sometimes, like literally worse than Beijing. We were the worst air quality, like of the whole day, like all around the planet. It was, so yeah. Poseidon says Rage Against the Machine is Marxist. No wonder why you like them. I did not like the remake by Machine Gun Kelly. I thought that was kind of lame sauce. Why the fuck did they let Machine Gun Kelly touch that classic? Um, anyways, back to my stuff. Um, Trump, after saying, AOC plus three developed Biden's plan, he says, AOC knows nothing about the climate. Uh, when he says, uh, when he talks about buildings, he's talking about taking away windows. And I'm like, nobody's trying to take all the windows out of buildings. Like, it's like, he might as well have said, they're coming to rape your dogs. You know, it's, uh, they might want future uh, construction projects to have windows pointed in a certain direction, southerly facing windows that in the wintertime can catch more sunlight and warm up the rocks that the stone wall that's conveniently placed to catch the sun so that it warms up the house, and kind of like earth ships. If you've ever seen a house called an earth ship, But yeah, no, nobody's thinking about like taking away your windows. They might want to put like weather stripping on it. You know, I don't know. It was strange. They want to take away your windows. He says they want to spend 100 trillion. So Biden's like, my plan is endorsed by environmental and labor groups, and he thinks windmills cause cancer, and I think they make jobs. And then Trump was like, we're energy independent, and for the first time in history, and I know more about wind than you do. It kills all the birds. It creates a lot of problems, and they make them in Germany and China. So, little story for you guys. Um, 6 years ago, I was actually in a factory called Vestas. It's actually um, a Dutch company, and they have a plant here in Colorado. And I was helping to build nacelles. That was a little temporary job that I had. And in the front office of that factory, they had a little pamphlet that was like wind turbines for dummies, right? They're not windmills, by the way. They're wind turbines. And this pamphlet, it actually had one of the main points in it was like, no, wind turbines do not kill a whole bunch of birds. The biggest uh, thing that kills birds in America, if you really cared about birds, was is house cats. So don't own a house cat if you care about wild birds. Um, Windows, the windows that Trump wants to keep in buildings. Windows kill more birds than windmills, than wind turbines, right? Um, yeah. Trump then said solar doesn't have it yet. It's all a pipe dream. He's against fracking, and he keeps on wanting to bring up that Biden's against fracking to get Biden to say that he's not, because he knows that when it comes from Biden's mouth, which immediately followed right after that, it is divisive to the Democratic Party because the Bernie Bros want him to be against fracking, and there's very little people in the Democratic Party that are opposed to the banning of fracking. The people who work in jobs like fracking largely are not Biden supporters. Largely. I know some, and none of them are supporting Biden. Um, so basically, what it's doing when Biden says I'm not going to ban fracking right away, it's a gimme for Trump. So the fact that he caught him again, like he did in the first debate, and got him to say that he's not going to ban fracking, another point for Trump in this debate. Um, Trump then said he was then, and now all of a sudden he wasn't. And then Biden said, I opposed fracking on federal land, you know, not private. So there's that distinction. But SNL did a skit, just 2 nights later, and in that skit, where they're making fun of the debate, Biden says, Biden played by Jim Carrey. By Jim Carrey's Biden says, "I'm against fracking depending on what state I'm in. I'm for fracking depending on what state I'm in." And it was funny the way that Jim Carrey said it, but it was a much better point than what Trump made as far as being divisive. It's hard to laugh at when you're Bernie bro. When you come from the far left and you're looking at it like, yeah, he really isn't that fracking killer that Trump's making him out to be, and that's disappointing. And Trump is really doing a good job at being divisive again. Uh, Poseidon says, "Don't worry, the DNC will purge all progressives who complain too loudly, just like they always do. Debs don't believe in free speech." Okay. So, Kristen Welker, she was like, "So, people of color, they're worried about the oil plants that they live next to." And Trump was like, "Well, they're making a lot of money working in those plants." And, starts rambling. And he's like, "And we have inexpensive gas." And it's like, once again, he's putting profits over people's safety and health. Just like when he says the plexiglass is too expensive, you know, the businesses are dying, instead of, realizing that coronavirus kills people, and it's an expense that we should be affording to prevent people from dying. He's always putting profit before people. So Biden was like, "I understand these people who live on fence lines." So he used that word as it is. If you're on the far left, it's kind of a dog whistle to understand fence lines. Um, he said, "People in my state were dying and getting cancer. It's all about pollution." And then Trump interrupted him and said, "You're going to destroy the oil industry then." And then Biden's like, "I will transition to renewables." And Trump was like, "See, see. And remember that Texas and Pennsylvania and Oklahoma and Ohio." And I was like, "That's well played by Trump." He's definitely pointing out the states that need to uh, pay attention to different sorts of policies that each candidate has. And if they're voting based on their own financial interests instead of, the health of the environment and their community and all that, then they're going to vote for Trump. Well played. Plus 1 point for Trump. Biden was like, net zero emission is necessary. And then Trump was like, "Will he get China to do it?" And then Biden was like, "I'll rejoin the Paris Accord, and then I'll make China abide by what they already agreed to." Just pointing out the fact that Trump uh, left the Paris Accord, and then it came off to me as kind of weak. Um, the last thing Kristen Welker asked them, she said, "Imagine this is inauguration day. What do you say to the people who didn't vote for you?" And then Trump, he goes right into stump mode, and he's like, "We have to rebuild after the China plague." And he's like, "Before the plague came in, we had the best minority unemployment in history." True. Successes will bring us together. Since when is Trump uh, worried about bringing us together? He's so divisive. Um, he says, "I'm cutting taxes, he'll raise them. Uh, you're growing the deficit." Um, he says, "If he gets in, you'll have a depression the likes of which you've never seen, and all your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very sad day for the country. Very sad." Um, it was cartoonish. It really was. So then Biden was like, "I would say I'm your American president, whether you voted for me or against me. Hope, science over fiction, hope over fear, enormous opportunities, grow the economy, clean energy, uh, millions of new jobs. What's on the ballot is the character of our country, decency, respect. You haven't been getting that the last 4 years." And then at that point, I'd say that last question, I think Biden uh, edged Trump out, you know, a little bit, because he's basically saying, you know, this high energy guy over here, he's been giving you a lot of anxiety. Vote me in, and things will calm down a bit. Um, that was the end of the debate. I thought Kristen Welker did better than the first debate. There were still a little rough patches here and there, but the debate was a little bit more enjoyable than the first one. Um, I would say, in my opinion, Trump would have done more damage with the things that he said to Biden's campaign than Biden did to Trump's. That's my opinion, and I know I, after watching coverage of other people who also watched the same debate, I disagree with them. A lot of them think that Biden won, and I don't. Um, I thought Trump himself looked a little bit more stately in this showing than he did in the first debate, which was horrible. Um, but overall, I don't know that this debate mattered at all. I don't think that it changed anyone's opinion as far as who they're voting for, especially those people who have already cast their ballots anyway, because we have, you know, early voting that happens prior to these debates happening. So all those people it didn't affect. Plus, I think people are pretty set in what they're going to vote for, and I think, like I said, none of these issues that I wish people actually cared about more, none of these issues are going to matter as much as the coronavirus. Because I want to live in a world where I don't have to say the word coronavirus. Um, there's very few words that bring me that much pain when people say it. Just that mental. Um, I would say the words atheist and theist sometimes bring me that. The word occupy does that for me. 9/11. Don't want to hear about it anymore. You know, I'm over it. You know, I don't want to be living it anymore. And yeah, Spurgleberry Farm in the chat says, so you'll run you'll pay a highway tax to run your computer. Um, I was not aware that there was a tax on the use of computers that was being proposed to pay for highways, but it's interesting. You know, there's different things that you can tax that people do that are not necessities. You know, I would think that putting a tax on computer use would be something that people would push back on a lot more than taxes on, say, uh, cigarettes and vaping and alcohol and cannabis and stuff like that. You know. Oh, Spurgleberry Farm says, read above. We're talking about electric cars versus gasoline tax to pay for highways. Oh, oh, wait. I see what you're saying there. That if there's, you know, if the money to pay for the highways comes from gas, because we're putting tax on gas, all those people who use our highways with electric cars are not putting into the same system that they're using. Mm. Perhaps that needs to be baked into the cost of an electric car. You know, a tax on electric cars. And I'm pretty sure that Biden would be completely against that. But yeah, whatever's using the the roads needs to be paying for maintaining the roads. In Colorado, we pay a pretty hefty price just to register our vehicles. I believe last time I renewed my tags, it was like $75. So if you get every person who's a driver in the state paying that much for registering, renewing the registration and just getting a sticker in the mail, a lot of that money can go to you know repairing your highways. Poseidon's worried about California being the model because they have rolling blackouts um, as far as energy is concerned. I definitely don't want that, but here in Colorado, we did decommission the Drake power plant that was our coal fired power plant. And we got a nuclear plant up in Pueblo, and it's running fine. Um, wow, you guys had a whole discussion about gas prices and gas taxes in the chat. Jeez, I'm ready to call the show over. So if you guys need to continue your chat, go ahead. But yeah, maybe we need to just have a different place for all these comments to go after I like stir everybody up, and then people are trying to get that last word in. Prompter Hawk says that the electrical grid is already strained and everybody wants electric cars. Um, maybe we'll put a little bit of solar and wind turbines in our own backyards, and we'll all just power our own cars from now on. Could happen. Not in my house because the roof is actually the angle is not pointed in the right direction. It's like the seam of the roof goes north south, and like the panels would be facing either east or west, which is not good. You want southerly facing in the U.S. So we're not doing solar on our house. But maybe if I move, would you guys follow me if I moved? All right. It's late. I gotta go. Talk to you guys later. Um, vote